I was standing in the grocery store aisle just the other day, staring down at a tiny, shriveled, sad-looking piece of ginger. The little plastic sign underneath it said it was $10 a pound. $10 for something that looked like it had been kicked across a warehouse floor. Right next to that fresh produce section was the baking and spice aisle, offering a tiny glass jar of so-called organic ginger powder that cost even more. And let me tell you the honest truth, I opened a jar of that stuff once, and it smelled exactly like old sawdust. It had probably been sitting in a shipping container, then a distribution center, and finally on that store shelf, losing its potency for 2 or 3 years before it even reached my hands. Seeing that really got me thinking about the way things work nowadays. The modern food supply chain, run by these massive corporate conglomerates, is designed entirely around one single concept, and that is your absolute dependency. They want you completely reliant on their system. They want you opening your wallet and paying a premium every single time your stomach is upset and you need a soothing tea, or every time you want to bake something warm for your family in the winter. They take a basic, incredibly easy to grow plant, ship it from thousands of miles across the ocean, irradiate it so it lasts forever on a shelf, and charge you a massive markup just to keep you paying that monthly grocery bill until the end of time. Well, we are putting a hard and permanent stop to that nonsense today. My grandparents and the generations before them built their country and their lives on the unwavering principle of self-reliance. They built things with their own 2 hands. They did not depend on a global shipping network or a corporate trucking schedule to stock their winter pantry. If you are tired of overpaying for weak, stale spices, and if you're exhausted from watching your hard-earned dollars drain away to utility companies and grocery monopolies, you are exactly where you need to be. Because today, I'm going to show you exactly how to grow ginger in containers and get a huge harvest right on your own back porch without spending a fortune. We are going to break that chain of dependency, and by the very end of our time together today, I'm even going to show you how to take that massive fresh harvest and preserve it into a lifetime supply of potent, homemade ginger powder. But before we start packing dirt into pots and getting our hands muddy, we need to sit down and talk facts. You cannot successfully grow any plant, let alone a tropical one, if you do not understand how it functions on a fundamental biological level. Now, everyone in the world, from television chefs to gardening magazines, calls it ginger root, but biologically and scientifically speaking, that terminology is completely false. What we eat, and what we are going to plant today, is not a root at all. It is actually a rhizome. A rhizome is a highly modified, fleshy, underground stem. It is the literal main stem of the ginger plant. It just happens to live its entire life horizontally below the soil line, instead of standing straight up in the air like a tree trunk. It acts exactly like a giant biological battery, storing vast amounts of carbohydrates, nutrients, and raw cellular energy so the plant can survive through harsh environmental conditions. Understanding that biological battery gives us our first critical rule for planting. When you look closely at a piece of ginger, you will see little bumps and raised knobs all over the papery skin. We call those eyes. Those eyes are the growth nodes, the exact anatomical spots where the new green shoots will eventually emerge and break through the earth. The honest truth here is just simple biology, combined with basic math. The larger the piece of rhizome you put into the dirt, the more eyes it is going to have. More eyes mean you get more green shoots pushing up through the soil. More shoots mean the plant develops a much wider canopy of broad leaves. Those broad leaves are solar panels, catching the sunlight and driving a massive increase in photosynthesis. All of that extra solar energy gets converted into sugars and funneled right back down into the earth, charging up that underground rhizome battery, which guarantees you a much faster and a significantly larger harvest. If you try to be too frugal up front and break off a tiny little piece with only one single eye, you are going to be waiting a very long time for a terribly small reward. You have to give the plant enough starting energy to establish itself. There is another vital reason you absolutely must know you're dealing with a creeping rhizome and not a true taproot. Because it is an underground stem, ginger behaves very differently than your standard garden root crops. If you plant a carrot, a parsnip, or a radish, the biology of that plant drives it straight down, deep into the earth, seeking water and stability. Ginger does absolutely nothing of the sort. As the rhizome wakes up and the stalks begin to rise toward the sun, the underground portion of the plant creeps horizontally across the top layer of the soil. It expands outward, moving sideways just an inch or two under the surface, multiplying and branching out like fingers. This is a non-negotiable scientific fact of how the plant evolved, and it directly dictates everything we do next regarding our equipment. If you do not understand that this plant wants to run sideways, you are going to waste your precious time, your hard-earned money, and your good soil using the completely wrong setup. So, keeping that sideways growth habit firmly in your mind, let us talk about sourcing our ginger and setting up our containers. Now, if you open up one of those fancy, glossy seed catalogs that arrive in the mail every spring, you will see specialty agricultural companies trying to sell you so-called official seed ginger for an absolute fortune. They want you to believe that you need their genetically verified, premium-priced, disease-free product to get a decent harvest. Do not fall for it. That is just another clever marketing tactic they use to empty your pockets. You can walk right into your local, everyday grocery store and find exactly what you need to start a massive ginger empire for just $2 or $3. When you're standing there in the produce section, I want you to take your time. Look past the bruised, broken, and shriveled pieces. Pick up the ginger, feel it in your hands. You are looking for a chunk that is firm to the touch, heavy for its size, and plump with natural moisture. And most importantly, you want to inspect those little eyes, those growth nodes. You want to see them starting to swell up, perhaps even turning a faint yellowish green color at the very tips. That color change tells you the life inside that rhizome is waking up and practically begging to grow. Grabbing a $3 piece from the grocery store is the ultimate way to practice frugality and take control back from the corporations who want to overcharge you for something nature provides so freely. Once you bring your ginger home, you need to put it in the right home. Remember the biology we just discussed. The rhizome creeps sideways. So, taking a deep, narrow 5-gallon plastic bucket and filling it to the very brim with expensive potting soil is a complete waste of your resources. The ginger will never, ever reach the bottom of that bucket. The bottom 10 inches of soil will just sit there, turning sour and anaerobic. Instead, we are doing things the frugal way, the smart way. You want a wide, shallow pot. In fact, you do not even need to buy a pot at all. If you have an old, wide plastic storage tub, a cracked heavy-duty mortar mixing pan, a broken wheelbarrow, or a shallow feeding trough lying around the barn, repurpose it. Just make absolutely sure you take a drill and punch plenty of half-inch drainage holes all over the bottom. Water needs to escape freely, or your ginger will drown. We do not waste anything around here, especially not perfectly good containers that still have years of life left in them just waiting to be used. For the soil, we are not going to use heavy, compacted dirt dug straight out of the backyard. Ginger needs a highly specific, loose environment. Think about it logically for a second. If the soil is packed as hard as concrete, how can that underground stem push outward and expand? It simply cannot. It will be choked out by the heavy clay and the sheer physical resistance of the dirt. So, you want to fill your wide container with a high-quality, very loose potting mix that is heavily enriched with organic matter. I like to mix my own to save money. A good recipe is 1 part dark, rich compost, 1 part aged leaf mold for acidity and texture, and 1 part perlite or coarse sand to guarantee aggressive drainage. That combination gives the rhizome the fluffy, nutrient-dense bed it needs to stretch its legs, so to speak, while retaining just the exact right amount of moisture to keep the biological engine running. Now comes the planting phase. And this is where so many well-meaning folks make a fatal mistake because they treat ginger exactly like a potato. When my grandfather planted his potatoes to feed our family through the long winter, he dug deep trenches, laid the seed potatoes way down in the dark earth, and kept piling dirt on top of them as the green stems grew upward. Do not ever do that with ginger. If you bury your ginger rhizome 6 inches deep, it will rot in the dark, suffocated by the heavy, wet soil before it ever sees a single ray of sunshine. You want to place your plump, healthy piece of ginger right on top of your loose potting mix, ensuring that those swelling eyes are pointing directly upward toward the sky. Then, you simply dust it with soil. You only want to cover it with about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch of dirt. Just barely hide it from the direct sun. Give the soil a nice, firm press with the flat of your hand to ensure the rhizome has good, solid physical contact with the earth underneath it, but do nothing too wild. Do not compact it. At this early stage, your freshly planted ginger is incredibly vulnerable. It has no root system pushing down to drink, and it has no green shoots reaching up to breathe or transpire water. So, if you grab the garden hose and flood that container until it looks like a muddy swamp, that beautiful ginger piece is going to turn to mush within a week. The honest truth is, you can easily kill this resilient plant with kindness. All you need to do is give it a gentle watering, just enough to moisten the top 2 inches of the soil. That slight, gentle moisture sends a powerful biological signal to the sleeping rhizome that the rainy season has arrived, and it is finally time to wake up, push out those feeder roots, and get to work. And speaking of the rainy season, you must always remember the historical origins of this plant. Ginger comes from the deep, equatorial tropical climates of Southeast Asia. That means its biology expects 3 specific environmental conditions: serious heat, heavy humidity, and steady, consistent moisture. If you live in a cold climate where winter still has a freezing grip on the land, you cannot leave this container outside. The cold will kill it instantly. You need to start it indoors, in a warm room, perhaps near a sunny south-facing window right in the early spring. You must wait patiently indoors until you see those tough, beautiful, tightly rolled green shoots break through the surface of the soil. Only when the true danger of frost has completely passed and the nighttime temperatures are reliably staying in the upper 60s or low 70s, do you even think about moving that container out onto your porch or into your garden? Let us pretend your ginger has successfully sprouted. You have safely moved the container outside into the warm summer air, and you are a couple of months into the active growing season. The absolute greatest skill you can develop as a gardener, or just as a homeowner trying to survive these incredibly expensive times, is the simple act of paying attention. You do not need a fancy agricultural degree from a university to grow food. You just need to slow down, look closely at your plants, and watch for the visual signs. They will tell you exactly what they need. Ginger is a remarkably resilient plant provided you match the conditions it evolved to expect. Let us talk about the honest truth regarding the 3 most common problems you're going to run into during the summer and exactly how to fix them without buying expensive chemical treatments. First, you might walk out to your porch one hot afternoon and notice the very tips of those gorgeous fragrant green leaves are turning crispy, brown, and brittle. That brown tip is a direct biological distress signal. It means the ambient environment is far too dry, and the soil is losing moisture to evaporation faster than the shallow root system can pull it up. Remember the humid tropical jungle it came from. The fix here is incredibly simple, and it costs you absolutely nothing. Go find some old dried leaves, some clean straw, or some standard wood chips, and lay down 1 or 2 solid inches of mulch right on top of the soil in your container. That natural organic blanket will shield the bare soil from the baking sun, trap the rising humidity right around the base of the plant, and keep that moisture locked right where the creeping rhizome needs it most. The second major issue you might see is the overall deep green color of the plant fading away, turning into a pale, sickly yellow across the entire leaf surface. Biology tells us that ginger is an extremely heavy feeder. It takes an enormous amount of raw nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium to build that massive underground battery we talked about. When the leaves turn yellow, the plant is screaming that the soil is entirely depleted and it is starving to death. All you need to do is provide a good handful of a basic, slow-release organic granular fertilizer. Scratch it gently into the surface of the soil under the mulch and let the next rain or your next watering wash it down into the root zone. There is absolutely no need for complicated, brightly colored synthetic chemical liquids that you have to buy a monthly subscription for. Those synthetics actually destroy the natural soil food web over time. Keep it simple, keep it natural, and feed the soil so the soil can feed the plant. The third problem is the most heartbreaking one, and I will be perfectly blunt with you here because I believe in the honest truth. If you dig your fingers down into the soil and the rhizomes feel squishy, soft, or slimy, or if the soil smells sour like a stagnant swamp, you are rotting the plant out from underneath. You are drowning it. You are either watering it far too often out of a nervous habit of wanting to do something, or you completely ignored my earlier advice about drilling proper, sizable drainage holes in your container. Water must be allowed to escape the system. If you find your soil soggy, back off the watering immediately, move the pot to a warmer area if possible, and let the container dry out. Ginger loves moisture, but it absolutely hates sitting in mud. Sometimes, right in the middle of late summer when the heat is at its peak, you might see a strange cone-like stalk push up from the center of the plant and produce a complex, incredibly unique flower. I have had folks write to me in an absolute panic thinking the plant is bolting and ruined, the way lettuce turns bitter and inedible in the July heat. Take a deep breath. That is just nature taking its course. Let it bloom. I highly encourage you to leave it be, because ginger flowers are absolutely beautiful. They attract beneficial pollinators to your yard, and believe it or not, the flowers themselves are completely edible and make a wonderful garnish. Fast forward to 4 or 5 months into the growing season. The days are starting to get noticeably shorter. You can feel a sharp, crisp chill in the autumn air, and you know that the first hard frost of the year is rapidly approaching. A heavy frost will kill the top growth of your tropical ginger dead overnight, turning those glorious green leaves into a black, withered mess. Before that happens, it is time to reap the rewards of your honest labor. You're going to take that wide container, tip it over onto a clean tarp, and dig your bare hands deep into that loose, beautiful soil. You are going to pull up an absolute monster of a harvest. What started as one little $3 grocery store chunk has now multiplied into pounds and pounds of fresh, potent, pristine ginger root. Take the garden hose and wash all of that dirt off right there in the yard. Now you have a beautiful, empowering choice to make. You can bring it inside and use what you need fresh for cooking, marinades, and teas right now. But here's the ultimate secret to true self-reliance, the exact way my grandmother used to run her household to ensure we never went without. Take a few of those fattest, healthiest, most vigorous chunks of ginger, brush them completely clean of dirt, let the skin dry for a day, and store them down in a cool, dark root cellar environment. A simple cardboard box filled with slightly damp sand or dry pine sawdust in an unheated basement or a cool closet works perfectly. The rhizomes will go dormant in the cool dark. Next spring, when the ground thaws and the days get longer, you bring those pieces back upstairs. Those chunks become your brand new seed ginger for the new year. Once you do this right, just one single time, you have stepped completely outside their corporate system. You will never have to buy ginger from a grocery store ever again for the rest of your life. Now that you know how to grow a massive, unending supply of ginger and keep it going year after year, we have to talk about the kitchen. Bringing that huge harvest from the dirt to your cutting board is one of the most rewarding feelings in the entire world. But unless you are running a commercial bakery or a restaurant out of your living room, you probably cannot use 10 pounds of fresh ginger before it starts to go soft and bad on the counter. And this brings us right back to our core homesteading philosophy. We do not waste anything. So for our final lesson today, I'm going to show you exactly how to turn your fresh harvest into a potent, pure, incredibly valuable ginger powder. Think about the ginger powder you buy in those little plastic bottles at the supermarket. It has been processed in a massive industrial factory, boiled down, irradiated with heat to kill off bacteria, packed into plastic, and shipped across the country. By the time you sprinkle it into your hot tea or your baking dough, it has lost almost all of its medicinal value, its sharp bite, and its volatile essential oils. When you take the time to make it yourself at home, you are capturing that raw, vibrant, medicinal energy exactly at its absolute peak. Start by taking the fresh rhizomes you just harvested and bringing them to the kitchen sink. You want to give them a very thorough wash and a heavy, aggressive scrub with a stiff bristle brush to get every last microscopic particle of garden dirt out of all the little crevices on the skin. Once they are perfectly clean, grab a very sharp chef knife. We are going to slice the ginger, but you cannot just hack away at it carelessly like you are chopping firewood. Here is the scientific reason why. When you are dehydrating food, moisture evaporates from the exposed surface area. If you cut one slice thick and the next slice paper thin, they will dry at completely different rates. You will end up with thin pieces that are burnt to a crisp and thick pieces that still have moisture trapped deep in the center. Trapped moisture equals mold, and mold will completely ruin an entire jar of hard-won spice in a matter of days. So, take your time, respect the ingredient, and slice the ginger into very clean, highly uniform pieces, about 1/8 of an inch thick. To dry them out, you absolutely can lay them on a mesh screen out in the hot summer sun if you live in a dry, arid climate. That is the traditional ancestral way, and it costs exactly $0. But if you live in a humid area, or if you want to ensure a perfect, consistent result every single time, you can use a very basic, budget-friendly electric food dehydrator. You do not need a fancy $600 stainless steel machine. A cheap, simple plastic model with stackable trays that you can find at a thrift store works flawlessly. Lay your uniform ginger slices out on the trays, making absolutely sure none of the pieces are overlapping. You need steady, uninterrupted airflow moving around every single slice. Turn the machine on and set the temperature dial to exactly 115 degrees. You are going to let that machine run for about 3 to 4 hours. Now, do not just stare at the clock and assume it is done when the timer goes off. Cooking and preserving are about feeling the food, not just following a clock. You have to test the ginger with your own hands. Pick up a slice of the dried ginger and try to bend it. If it bends, even a little bit, it is not ready. There is still internal water inside the cellular structure. It needs to stay in the dehydrator until it absolutely snaps completely in half with a sharp, loud crack. That specific sound is your physical confirmation that there is 0 water content left inside the plant tissue. Take those brittle, perfectly dried snaps of ginger and drop them into a standard little electric spice grinder. You can even use an old coffee bean grinder that you have wiped completely clean of old coffee oils. Pulse those metal blades for just a few seconds, and you will instantly transform those hard pieces into a fine, beautiful, bright golden powder. The smell that will hit your nose when you take the plastic lid off that grinder is going to be absolutely incredible. It will be stronger, sharper, and vastly more fragrant than anything you have ever bought in a commercial store. You can store that powder in a tightly sealed glass jar in a cool, dark pantry, and it will give you a potent medicine for upset stomachs, a warming, comforting spice for cold winter teas, and a brilliant, sharp flavor for your baking all year long. Now, before you rush out the door to get your garden started, we need to pause and talk about safety, because keeping your family, your pets, and your property safe is always my absolute top priority. So, listen closely to me right now. My safety word for today is inhibitors. This is crucial if you are buying your starter ginger from a conventional grocery store instead of an organic market. Those massive corporate farms heavily spray their ginger crops with chemical growth inhibitors before they load them onto the transport trucks. They do this because they want the ginger to sit on the store shelves under those bright, hot fluorescent lights for weeks on end without naturally sprouting. If you take an unwashed piece of store-bought ginger and put it directly into your soil, those synthetic chemical inhibitors will do exactly what they were engineered in a laboratory to do. They will aggressively stop the plant from growing, and your rhizome will just sit in the dirt, unable to push out shoots until it eventually rots. You must take your store-bought ginger to the sink, use warm water and a few drops of mild dish soap, and scrub the skin vigorously. Rinse it completely clean of all soapy residue. This physical scrubbing strips away those chemical sprays and allows the natural biology of the plant to wake up and do what it wants to do. I also need to give you a very stern, serious warning regarding your household pets. Ginger itself is largely non-toxic to your dogs and cats, which is a wonderful thing for those of us who love our animals. But earlier, I told you to use an organic granular fertilizer if your plant gets hungry and the leaves turn yellow. Many of the absolute best, most effective natural fertilizers are made from concentrated bone meal or blood meal. You and I know it is just a soil amendment, but to a dog, highly sensitive nose, it smells exactly like buried meat. I have seen folks lose their entire season crop because their family dog smelled that bone meal, dug furiously into the container while they were at work, and shredded the vulnerable ginger rhizomes to pieces looking for a bone that was not there. If you use those organic animal-based amendments, you must place your containers up on a sturdy table, a high porch, or behind a secure physical fence where your dogs absolutely cannot reach them. And lastly, when you're in the kitchen preparing your harvest, respect those spice grinder blades, unplug the machine before you clean it, and be very, very careful when slicing raw ginger with your chef knife, as the inside of the rhizome can be quite dense, fibrous, and very slippery. All right, it is time for your homework for this week. I do not just want you watching these videos. I want you taking actual physical action to improve your life and your independence. I want you to go down to your local grocery store this week and spend just $3 on a plump, healthy piece of ginger that has a few good eyes starting to swell. Bring it home, scrub those chemical inhibitors off the skin, find an old wide container in your garage or barn, punch a few good drainage holes in the bottom, and get your ginger planted in some loose, well-draining soil. When you get that done, drop a comment down below and tell me exactly what kind of container you ended up repurposing for your ginger crop. Did you use an old wash tub, a broken feeding bucket, or something else entirely? I sit down with a cup of coffee every morning, and I read every single comment because I love seeing how resourceful and creative this community can be when we put our minds to it. Next time we get together, I'm going to show you exactly how to keep pests out of your winter pantry. And we are going to do it using old-fashioned methods without spending a single dime on those toxic chemical sprays that the big corporations try to sell you. Until then, take care of your family, trust your own two hands to do the work, and remember the rule we live by: waste nothing.